All right, we're starting Parshas Mishpatim. So, send out, what do you call it, a WhatsApp or something? Okay. So we're on page, what page? At the beginning of Mishpatim. So Torah says, Ve'ela ha-mishpatim asher tosim lifneihem. These are the statutes that you should place before the Jewish people. And this comes after a previous Parsha. We're talking about the giving of the, guys who are sitting over there, do me a favor, come sit over here. It's easier for me if you're in the shir, you're in the shir, so be here. So Torah says, Ve'ela ha-mishpatim asher tosim lifneihem. These are the statutes. Now, last week's Parsha, we're learning about the giving of the Torah, page 416. So if you notice, Rashi says ve'ela to connect up to the previous. Rashi says it's the second line of Rashi in the right column. Mahari shonen with the extra vav ve'ela. It's a funny way to start a sentence. And these. It starts in and these are. What's the and? What do you need the and for? Just say these are the statutes. So, and these is telling you, Mahari Shonim Misinai, just as the first ones came from Sinai, what we learned last week. Af Elu Misinai, so too, these are coming from Sinai. Now, we're going to see a bunch of laws having to do with slaves and monetary law. Why is the Torah telling us, what's the connecting vav for? To tell you, well, the same one, the last week, those laws came from Sinai. These laws come from Sinai as well. Why is the Torah emphasizing that? What do you have to tell me that for? That these laws also come from Sinai. Where else would they come from? So I heard, I think Rabbi Rockmill, Zichrono Livracha, he said, you're going to get over here a bunch of laws having to do with money and penalties that you pay. And what you're not allowed to do, don't curse your parents and don't hit your parents and that sort of thing. And it just wants us to know none of these laws are man-made. None of them are man-made. Even the ones that are very logical to us, they're not. They all come from Sinai. All the laws come from Sinai, number one. Number two, there are a lot of laws that are man-to-man laws that make sense to us. You have to be nice to people and help a donkey if it's crumbling under it. So a lot of laws make sense to us. Then you get some other laws over here, which are they're going to be a little bit tricky. They don't make so much sense. The Torah is telling you, even the ones that make sense, it's not because they make sense. It's because the ones that don't make sense, that for sure comes from Sinai. It doesn't make sense. So obviously, only a God could have given a law like that. Don't wear wool and linen together, or don't eat pork. That don't make any sense to me. Okay, that comes in. But what about the laws that do make sense? The Torah has emphasized those laws also come from Sinai. We're not doing it because it makes sense to us. We're doing it because they obviously come from Sinai. And that's the connecting letter Vav. Ve'ela mishpatim asher tosim lefehem, it comes from Sinai. Number three, if I say the word religion, religious, spirituality, what do you think of? What's the first word that comes when I say spirituality?
Rabbi Kaplan.
You're embarrassing me. Keep going. What's the first word you think when you think of spirituality? Hashem. Religious spirituality. What do you think of? Closing your eyes at the Chadodi, right? Or some davening, learning, that sort of thing. The Torah wants you to know. You ever been to court? You ever been to Beis Din, where people are squabbling over money? You won't find people at your best under those circumstances. And it could get. I hate to use the word. It could get downright filthy. That's also Torah. Don't think that it's just Torah is just the realm of the spiritual. In a Beis Din, I had a guy once in my shul. He came on Rosh Hashanah. A guy came to the shul to where I daven on Rosh Hashanah. I asked him, why are you davening here? He used to daven. So I said, why are you davening here this year? He said, I want to hear the guy who blows the shofar. I want to hear him blow shofar. I mean, the guy's good. He's not, not world class. Yeah, the guy's a good belt. Okay, it's nothing special. I said, why him? He said, because I once saw him in Din Torah, and I saw his behavior in a Din Torah. And with everything that was happening, he maintained his respect and his self-control. That's a guy I want to hear him blow shofar. And he said, listen, you don't always, when a person says, I want justice, or they ever hear someone says, I want justice. I want justice means I want them to rule in my favor. That's what I want justice means. Yeah, but justice may be against you. Then what do you do? What do you do when they paskin against you? How do you react there? So even the things that are not, you don't think about money as spirituality. And the answer is spiritual. What is the definition of spirituality? People think spirituality involves closing our eyes, with hands up. That's spirituality. Spirituality means doing what God wants us to do. That's spirituality. It's my definition anyway. He's a spiritual person means he's doing what the halacha says to do. He's doing what the Torah says to do. And the Torah says that sometimes you got to give up your money, and sometimes you have to fight for your money. And there are a lot of things that don't seem very spiritual, but that's the halacha. Okay. Now, Rashi points out another item here, and this is a very central concept. Take a look at Asher Tosim Lifnehem. I want you to read Rashi with me. It's four lines from the top. Right column. Asher, these are the laws you shall place before them. Amar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu Moshe. Hashem said to Moshe Rabbeinu, Lo sal al daitcha, do not entertain the thought, Lomar, Eshne lahem haperek v'halacha bezo gimel pa'amim. I'll just teach them the chapter or the halacha 2 or 3 times, ad shetehe sedura b'fihem kemishnasa, until they know it by rote. Ve'eni matriach atzmi la'avinam tamei adavar, and I won't trouble myself to make them understand the rationale behind it. Rather, lekach ne'amar asher tosim lifneim, place it before them, kishulchan ha'aruch u'muchan lechol lifnei adam, place it out there like a table that's set and prepared for eating. So Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu, listen, don't think that you're just going to teach them the laws and have them stand there in the corner memorizing the laws, like you memorize secular law. Those of you who are American, you took a constitution test in 8th grade and you have a constitution test. Don't think that you're going to just go and memorize the laws. You're going to teach it to them and they'll have to memorize it by rote. Rather, lay it out for them, like teach them the rationale. What is rationale called? Tamei hadovar, like we learn in the Gemara. When the Gemara asks, what's the reason? How's the Gemara? Do you remember the expression the Gemara uses for what's the reason? My taima. What? Did you ever wonder about that? What's the reason? What's tam in Hebrew? Taste. So why did the Gemara says my taima? What's the taste? What's the taste? So when it comes to studying the mitzvahs, Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu, teach them the rationale. Don't just tell them what they're doing by rote. Explain to them what lies behind it. Now that means like this. It's a very, very important. It's a very, very central and important concept to understand about Yiddishkeit. And it's compared to a food. It's compared to a table. Did you ever wonder? Did you ever try to find it strange? The body of law in Torah is called the Shulchan Aruch, the set table. I mean, Jews are into food. We know that, but you couldn't even get away from it for a little while you're studying the law. The Shulchan Aruch has 4 sections. But it's called the Shulchan Aruch. Why is it called the Shulchan Aruch? Because of this Rashi. Rashi's quoting Chazal over here. But this is the source for why the body of law is called Shulchan Aruch. What does that mean? What does that mean? So there is this comparison to table and comparison to food, the parallel to food. And what that means is like this. There are 2 reasons we eat. We eat for nutritional value. We have to keep ourselves alive. And we eat because food tastes good. Now, if I'd ask you which one is more essential component, the taste or the nutritional value? Obviously, the latter. Nutritional value is obviously more important. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu could have given us food. It could have been like just 3 cubes of tasteless, unflavored tofu, which we would have to eat 3 times a day to keep ourselves alive, like Soylent Green. Just to keep ourselves alive. Do you ever see that? Soylent Green? You never saw the movie Soylent Green?
I know how it is.
With Charlton Heston? That was Charlton Heston, right? I think so. Yeah, what's that? Soylent Green is people. Yeah. So they could have given us, Hashem could have given us tofu, tasteless tofu 3 times a day. Why did Hashem Baruch Hu add flavor to the food? The answer is that when food has flavor, it makes the eating experience more exciting, and we are more eager to eat, and it becomes a more enjoyable experience, and therefore we eat it, and we eat it with enthusiasm. Got you 1 second, Andrew. When it comes to rationale of the mitzvah, we are meant to investigate the mitzvahs and try to figure out what did Hashem have in mind when He gave us the mitzvah. That's why it's called the tam of the mitzvah. In other words, if somebody would ask you, why do you do the mitzvahs? Why do you have to do the mitzvahs? One reason why we have to do the mitzvahs, because Hashem said so. But if we did the mitzvah simply because Hashem said so we would do it like good soldiers. But when we understand what's behind it, we do it with even greater enthusiasm. It means something to us. If somebody tells you that tefillin symbolize a badge of honor that we put on our arm and on our head, symbolizing that we're strapping God to ourselves and we're showing that God is on our body, it's a badge of honor. That makes it more enthusiastic to put on tefillin. And if somebody tells you that a mezuzah represents that God is guarding us because He's on our doorway, so it makes it more exciting to do the mitzvah, and so on and so forth. Even if we don't know the reason, by the way, the Sefer Charedim, which is from about 250 years ago, he says, if a person would live 1,000 years twice, which is 2,000, which is a very poetic way of saying it, he says if a person would live 1,000 years twice, he would not fathom even the depth of even one mitzvah of what God had in His infinite wisdom. But that doesn't prevent us, and it does not stop us from trying to investigate it as much as we can. And whatever we see, I would even call it the benefits of the mitzvah. Now you just have to, I'll tell you why you have to be careful here. There are 2 things you have to be careful of. Number 1, the commentaries offer all sorts of rationale for the mitzvahs. What they're doing, they're not telling you that's the reason, and I even tell you it's the only reason. They're not telling you it's the only reason, and I even tell you there is infinite wisdom. But when we find the benefit from doing the mitzvah, we could be very confident that HaKadosh Baruch Hu had that in mind when He gave us a mitzvah. So, for example, if Jews suffer from do not suffer from trichinosis poisoning, which comes from pork, well, that's very often that may be a benefit of not eating pork. And if Jewish women have the lowest incidence of cervical cancer of any group in the world, well, then you understand that's very likely to be as a result of the NIDA laws. So we find the benefit. It doesn't mean that's the reason. It doesn't mean it's the only reason. And it doesn't even mean it's the primary reason. But that's certainly a ta'am. It's a taste of the mitzvah, which makes it more palatable and gives us greater enthusiasm to do it. We don't have a choice to do it. We have to do it anyway, even if we don't understand. We're going to ask Andrew.
With the food cubes, I believe NASA originally sent up astronauts with little cubes of nutrition, and after they were up there for a day or so and they came back down, they hadn't eaten any of them. They're like, why didn't you eat any of the food cubes? And it's like, we can't do it.
It's just too bad.
Yeah,
they tasted right.
Send them up with actual food now.
Oh, wait, because even in space where you're desperate, I'd rather starve than eat NASA cubes. You're right. That's part of the idea. The idea is that when it's, there's even something called people, not only there's food, not only the taste of food, there's presentation. We eat with our eyes. It's a remarkable thing. We eat with our eyes. I always said watermelon, if watermelon was opaque, was just kind of white, nobody would eat it. It's red, it's green, it just kind of looks happy. It's even cut in half like that, like a big smile. It's just everything about it is exciting. That Pepsi once marketed something called they tried marketing something called Pepsi Clear, where they took out, it was the same amount of sugar, the same amount of cocaine, the same amount of every caffeine. They just took out the whatever makes it black. Same exact taste, because they felt that people think that when it's clear, it's healthier. It bombed on the market. It bombed. I think it was out there for 3 months, and they took it off. They had Pepsi Clear. They yanked it off the market. Why? If I'm drinking Pepsi, I want it black and unhealthy. It bombed. It did not make it. I think they also tried putting out ketchup with different colors, like green, purple, that sort of thing. Nobody wanted it. And what's red ketchup? I got news for you. When ketchup went 100%. When ketchup comes off the rack, it's opaque, it's transparent. It's like a white mush. And then they put in a lot of red that makes you think you're eating tomatoes. Yeah, this nice tomato flavor over here. No, it isn't. It's which is that dye that they're now taking off the market. That's what we're consuming. You understand? You even eat with your eyes. The whole experience, that's HaKadosh Baruch Hu's kindness to make it. That's Tamei HaMitzvos. Tamei HaMitzvos is that we should understand, and that's our job. I once noticed, this is right now, I didn't see any commentaries say this, and I have very little doubt that this is also contained in the idea. I don't say it's the primary reason. I don't say it's certainly not the only reason. Do you ever notice in the secular world, your average person, how many weeks vacation you get in the course of the year?
2 weeks.
2 weeks vacation, right? Okay, look what we have. We have a weekly cycle, and at the end, every week we have something to look forward to. It's called Shabbos. Every week. Amazing thing. Amazing thing. Shabbos it recollects the creation of the world and taking us out of Egypt. Lots of spiritual things about Shabbos. But at the end of the day, on a very human level, we look forward to Shabbos, to just turning off for 24 hours. Turn off the switch for 24 hours, which is very important for human beings. And even in the secular world, they have a weekend. They don't turn off. They get drunk. But okay. Then, every 6 months, what have we got? 1 week of holiday, 1 week of Pesach, and remarkably, exactly 6 months later, 1 week of Sukkot. How do you like that? Exact 6-month intervals. So that you have the weekly cycle with something to break the routine, which we need as human beings. And then you have the monthly cycle. Every 6 months, there's a break in the routine, besides the little holidays. There's a break in the routine for an entire week, where you then get to spend time with your friends and your family for an entire week. And then Hashem in His mercy gives you 6 months till you got to spend time with them again. But you have that 1 week of a break. There's no question in my mind that that's what's contained in the holiday. It's also all the deep reasons of getting out of Egypt and the lulav and the esrog and the matzah, everything else. But it's a very real human reasons. That's clearly HaKadosh Baruch Hu had that in mind as well. I say as well. If we don't, like trichinosis, people say, well, pork, trichinosis. Well, nowadays they what do? They homogenize, they pasteurize, homogenize, all the things. They have all sorts of sterile. So there isn't as much trichinosis poisoning. Okay, so let's say it doesn't cause it anymore. That wouldn't change our obligation one iota. Wouldn't change it. I have a friend, by the way, a doctor. He told me that there's a young lady who was having some pain. She went to a doctor, and he told her she's got a certain parasite in her brain, and she had to have surgery. And after the surgery, she was recovering, and he said to her, can I ask you a question? Are you Jewish? Which doctors nowadays, you could probably lose your license for asking that question. You lose your license for asking, are you a male? But he said, are you Jewish? She said, yeah, why do you ask? She said, well, because the parasite that you had comes from pork consumption. I know that Jews don't eat pork. She says, well, pork, I happen to be Jewish, but I'm not observant, and pork happens to be my favorite food, and I eat a lot of pork. Not anymore. Now she's a balas tshuva because she got a little musar shvuz from the doctor. How do you like that? She became a balas tshuva. But even if it wouldn't be, even if we'd strip that away, even if we had a way to cure that, okay, but it still doesn't change the obligation. That's the critical point here. It doesn't change the obligation. The obligation is still there. Just that we're meant to find and search and look for the rationale, what's behind the mitzvah. And again, I heard it the way, it was not my original expression. I heard Rabbi Uziel Molesky, Zichron Livracha, he referred to it as the benefit of the mitzvah, which is very, very true. If there's a benefit, obviously it didn't happen by accident. If we find a benefit of the mitzvah, that also is contained in the rationale, besides all of the ideas that we can't possibly fathom. Okay. So the Torah starts with a very, very peculiar law. Kisikna eved ivri. When you buy a Hebrew, literally a Hebrew slave, but we're going to see that he's not exactly a slave. Sheish shanim yavod, 6 years he has to serve. Uvashviz yetze lachov shichinam. Now, what we're talking about over here is we're talking about a Jew who stole. What do you do with a guy who steals? So if he's got money, so the court could what's it called? They could force him. They could force the guy to pay back the money. If a guy's stolen, he's got money. Like what's his name? Giuliani is losing all his property, and they've even gone after his World Series rings and his Joe DiMaggio baseball card, a uniform, or whatever he's got, to pay off what he lost in that lawsuit. So the court takes possession of what you've got if you owe money. What about a guy that does have money? What do you do with the guys who don't have money? So they throw him in jail. What do you get in jail? What do you get in jail? All you do is you learn to become a better criminal. That's what happens. You put him in jail, so what's going to happen? So what do they do with a guy who stole and he can't pay? So the halacha is, if he's a Jewish man, the Beis Din sells him to pay off his debt. That's how it works. So for example, if Reuven stole $1,000 from Shimon, he owes Shimon $1,000. What are we going to do with Reuven? Reuven hasn't got any money. Beis Din puts out word. They do not put him on a slave block like they do with non-Jewish slaves. They put out the word, Reuven is for sale for 6 years. It'll cost you $1,000 to take on Reuven for 6 years. Room, board, and you pay the Beis Din. The Beis Din gives the money back to the guy he stole from, and now Reuven works off his debt for 6 years with the possibility of going free earlier if there's a Yovel. But that's the idea. Why not put him in jail? Why not put him in jail? So part of the idea is putting him in jail benefits nobody. You don't get your money back, so you get, there's no benefit for you. And he's going to learn bad things in jail. This way, he could live with a fine, upstanding Jew for 6 years and learn decent behavior, so he doesn't steal. So the benefit here is on all directions. It's a benefit for the victim, and it's a benefit for the thief that he should be sold to somebody where he could learn decent behavior. You notice he's called an Eved Ivri as opposed to an Eved Yisraeli. He's an Eved Ivri, not an Eved Yisraeli. Normally we're Bnei Yisrael, right? We're the Jews, we're Klal Yisrael. We're not Klal Ivrim, we're Klal Yisrael. Why is he called an Eved Ivri? So one of the Forshim says because the word Ivri, which Avram was called Avram Ha'Ivi because he was on Aver Hanar, he was on the other side of the river. But we're also, when a person sins, he's said to be over an Avera. This guy transgressed. He's an Eved Ivri. He's a slave who transgressed. As opposed to a non-Jewish slave who Jews were allowed to own. Jews actually could own slaves. Where did you get a slave? You got them from one of two places. Either you captured them in war. People ask, well, is it right to have slaves? Or why should you take slaves? That's not nice, take slaves. The answer is, where did you get slaves? You either got them in a war where they were attacking you and you attacked them. It was okay to kill them, huh? If it's okay to kill them, it's certainly okay to capture them and take them as slaves. You just ask the slave what he prefers. 9 out of 10 slaves surveyed recommend staying alive in servitude to a Jew than to be killed. To one place you could get a slave is you could buy him from, you could to capture slaves in war. The other places you could buy him from the other nations. Now let me ask you a question. Would you rather be a slave to a Roman master or to a Jewish master? Yeah, I think so. So people say, well, why don't you free him? Well, listen, it's not our job to go solve the world's ills and go around freeing all the slaves. But if you ask the slave, who would you rather serve, Antonio, or would you rather be over by some Jew who's going to be serving you meatballs and what do you call it, and chicken soup, right? They definitely would rather be by the Jew. So a Jew could own a non-Jewish slave. A Hebrew slave had a completely different set of rules. For one thing, the Gemara says, if you purchase a Hebrew slave, you've purchased a master for yourself. If you sleep on 2 pillows, he has to sleep on 2 pillows. If you eat steak, he has to eat steak. You're not allowed to make him do degrading work. He can't carry his towel. He can't do things that a slave, classically you think of as a slave. He can't polish your shoes, carry your towel behind you to the bathhouse. He can only do what we would call skilled labor. Plow the fields, put up shelves in the house, that sort of thing. Nothing degrading. And the reason you purchase him, and he stays by you for 6 years. After 6 years, then he has a choice. So then it says like this in Pasuk Gimel, In begapo yovo begapo yetze. If he came into you alone, he leaves alone. In bal ishahu v'yotzta ishto imo. If he was married when you took him, his wife goes with him. And we learn from here that if you buy a Hebrew slave, then you have to support his wife and kids too. Which obviously begs a question. You know, a guy's married and has 7 children. And now you're going to have to support 9 mouths for the next 6 years? Who would do that? Who would do that? So if he's a single guy, a nice strapping yeshiva bacher, and he's on the market, Nachshon here is on for sale for 6 years, and I think, he could help me build my sukkah, mow the lawn. What'll it cost me? A little chalt. Give him a room to sleep. It's worth it. It's a good deal. Have a nice yeshiva bacher on the property for 6 years. But I got to take on a guy with his wife and 7 children. Who needs that? I can't even support my own family. Got to take on his family too. Therefore, we're going to find that the Torah creates a motivation that a person is going to be willing to do such a thing. All right, that we'll have to see tomorrow. Again, I apologize for coming late.